Three, two, oh, it's already going. Welcome everyone to the TNC podcast. Christian and we just tried recording an episode. It went very poorly. We didn't have anything to talk about. And then Morgan was just like calling me and texting me constantly for the whole thing. So we decided to have her on as a guest because she's a longtime listener. So Morgan, welcome.
Thanks, guys.
Please introduce yourself to our listeners. Tell us what you do with your life.
So funny. How many listeners do you have?
Well, we have 26 subscribers. Actually, we have over 1,120 views last time I checked for total views. That's on YouTube. On Spotify, we have 11 total listens. So not as much on Spotify, but we're still newer on there. So in the bio for this video or in the description, I'll post the Spotify link so people can check it out.
Link in the bio. Check it out.
Check it out.
Yeah, this is so random that I'm here tonight. Coming from
random that we're all here tonight, you know?
Isn't the world just random? We're just floating on a rock through space
and time.
In 3 different states, all of us.
Where are you, Morgan?
Some say.
Exactly. You don't even know where I live.
Just background, there's a lot of tension between Morgan and Christian not keeping up with each other over the past years when we were talking earlier.
There's no tension. I was just asking a question.
There's a lot of tension. They hate each other, apparently.
All I said was I texted Toby and I was like, Christian, I tell him I love him because he's really making me laugh right now. And I was feeling really sad. And he was like, oh, so you're in love with Christian. Classic response.
After I've had one drink, I just can't read. I'll be honest with you. I really struggle with it, even when I'm sober.
He's a little retarded, all right?
I'm a little dumb.
Don't use the R word.
Retarded?
Well, retarded.
Welcome to the internet, Morgan. You can say whatever you want here, all right? God.
Christian and we talked about my stems on one of the podcasts. I don't know if that one was actually, or that part was actually released, but stems, like an autistic thing that you do to like emotionally relieve yourself, I guess you could say.
Did you know that you've also talked about your hemorrhoids on the podcast?
I did talk about that. Yeah, I talk about a lot of personal stuff.
So that was really cute.
Mm-hmm. That was cute. The girls like that when guys talk about their hemorrhoid problems.
Oh, all right.
I think so. The reason I talk about so many personal things is I think you should destigmatize stuff. Like I didn't know anything about hemorrhoids before I had one of my own, and I freaked out. Mm-hmm. I was like, what the heck is going on? Like, does this mean I'm gonna die? And I did like all this panic. I didn't really think I was gonna die, but I did all this panic research, and it was like, oh, like this actually happens to like 1/3 of adults or something like that. So it's actually pretty common, but I didn't know, and I didn't know the stuff to do to help it go away. So I could have saved myself some time if I had known that. And anyway, it wasn't as big of a deal as I thought. And yeah, so that's why I think we should talk about certain things like that. That's why Christian and I talk about pooping so much, because pooping is important.
I also noticed that as I listen, I got regular updates on how regular you are or are not.
Ooh, good play on words there. Speaking of that, Morgan, how have your poops been lately?
I'm not talking about that.
Well, you have to.
So. I'm not.
Get out.
Can you just flick me through the camera?
Get out. I pointed.
I didn't get a chance to introduce myself. My name's Morgan.
I'm Morgan.
And I'm from Alabama, just like these two guys. But I live in Ohio. And I'm a social worker. And it's a Wednesday night.
That it is.
And we're chatting on the podcast.
Toby admitted he's gay. Cheers,
I never said that. But why did you become a social worker, Morgan?
She likes socialists.
Not true.
You don't like socialists? That seems kind of prejudiced.
Yeah, that's kind of rude.
There's a difference between a socialist and a social worker.
Care to explain? Because I don't think so.
You don't have to explain.
All right.
You can
but
ignore him.
okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Why did I become a social worker? Well, I was a missionary for a couple years, and I really enjoyed that. Um, Giving back to others.
What was your mission?
I was working with the homeless in Denver, Colorado, my favorite place.
You've been to Denver? We've never talked about that. Classic inside joke.
Inside jokes. Um, yes, in Denver for 2 years with the homeless out there. And I think something I realized was just like I liked helping them navigate the broken systems of society and like going with them to doctor's appointments and court dates and working through legal stuff and housing stuff. Um, just kind of helping them figure out the ropes to live a better life and get off the streets. And even if they didn't want to get off the streets, how could they get good health care? How could they get food? And that's pretty much what social workers do. So I moved to Ohio in 2019, started working at a hospital, and I met some social workers in the hospital. And I actually wasn't planning on being a social worker. I just was working in the hospital as a healthcare administrator.
Yeah.
And then I met some social workers in the hospital setting, and I really liked what they specifically were doing to help the patients overcome like trauma and those who are coming in from like severe accidents and different injuries, and kind of helping them with the mental health side of things, but also navigating like follow up appointments, different resources, things like that. So I kind of found that that was my niche, was working with people in the hospital, also doing the social work side of things, which is not just about being a socialist. It's about actually
Nice.
encouraging people to accomplish goals on their own, um, and not just give them everything they need from our pockets, but helping them overcome the barriers in their life to do it themselves and to let them know like you're empowered and you can do this. Um, and so that's why I really love being a social worker, because I see people come from really hard backgrounds and really hard situations, overcome these things, find the strength within themselves to do the hard things and to be successful. And I get to kind of walk with them through that. Um, yeah, it's
What
nice.
what is the difference between a social worker and a clinical social worker?
Um, Good question. So really it's just social worker, and
Yeah.
then so we're all the same. If you're a clinical social worker, you're just working in the healthcare field. So I myself am a clinical social worker,
Okay.
working in the medical field. Now, if you are a licensed social worker and you have like your independent license, they also call that a clinical social worker, which just means like they've gone through the number of years you have to get like supervision and like hours um and then you take a test and you become a licensed independent social worker. Some states call it a licensed clinical social worker, but it's the same thing. So right now technically I'm just a regular licensed social worker, and I work in a clinical setting. So like I can refer to myself as a clinician or case manager. I like have the title of case manager as well. So yeah, but most social workers, we just say we're a social worker.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Interesting. Okay. In the military, when they send you to talk therapy type
mhm,
stuff, it's almost always they're always titled clinical social workers.
mhm,
It's pretty rare. You don't really see like a psychiatrist
mhm,
unless you're like actively suicidal, which I have not been, thankfully. But I have talked to a lot of social workers, and a lot of them aren't real good at the whole talk therapy stuff. As someone who works in that field, do you guys, is there like special certification or training that you get for talk therapy, or what does that look like? Because like I said, like the people that I've seen in the army, like I don't really think they know what they're doing. It kind of
Not
just
super
seems like they're
good.
people that are thrown into the scenario and they're making the best of it, which may be the case. I don't know. So what does that look like for you?
Yeah, that's I mean, I think too it's like every social worker is um comes from a different background. They have different passions, different experiences, and a lot of time talk therapy, you really are talking from I personally talk from personal experience a lot. But yes, you do go through many different trainings. School does not teach you how to be a therapist. I do not think my master's degree taught me how to talk with somebody through a counseling session. You really need to take extra, um, like online, they call them CEs, so continuing education. You have
Yeah.
to do a lot of those. Um,
Okay.
so kind of like when you guys spoke with Audrey, how she does a lot of continuing education after she's an occupational therapist to kind of
Yeah.
specialize, that's what we do. So I've taken like certified trauma um trainings where like I specifically have trainings in working with people who undergo trauma or PTSD, things like that. So I can kind of I have a better understanding of it than maybe a social worker who works with children sort of foster care. Like they might have a different type of um, therapy background working with kids.
Sure.
Um, Christian seems kind of bored right now. Are you
No,
bored?
no, this is just my natural state. Yeah, I can't. Sorry.
Okay, okay.
So we were joking around earlier. I didn't mean for it to get so serious, but I'm just curious. We just started talking about this stuff, so I'm just following it. I'm just following the tangent because I'm interested.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like, it sucks that like you've had poor experiences. I won't say bad, but like poor. I mean,
Probably call him back.
yeah, it's sometimes people are just thrown into it. Another thing with if it's a licensed clinical social worker, they can usually diagnose, but they can't prescribe medication. So I'd be interested to know if well, I don't need to know your medical history, but technically they can diagnose you, but they can't prescribe medication
It
for you.
it seemed like some of them did diagnose me, but I can't remember any of them prescribing
Mhm.
medication. I think all of them I got referred back to. I did see a psychiatrist once,
Which they
but
can't. So psychiatry, they can prescribe and
yeah, well,
diagnose.
they're like a regular medical doctor.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Most of the time, actually, the people that have prescribed me medications have been nurse practitioners, but I think that's
Mhm.
just kind of like a happenstance. Like that was who like the medical person in that position was. Because in the military, like you're not, I don't know, like you just get, it seems like they kind of just get thrown into certain positions, like a physician's assistant or a physician's associate, as I think is it's now called.
Mhm.
Those guys will sometimes be the primary care provider for like 1,500 people, like a brigade's worth of people, and like that's I don't think that's
That's
within
cool.
their training. I mean,
No,
they are a physician, but um,
it's a lot.
yeah. Anyway, so
But yeah, I mean, the people you've spoken with, they could just not have a strong background in talk therapy, or maybe personally, it's just personal opinion and experience was a lot of people I met in social work, they do have that sort of like group think mindset where like they are all very much like more progressive, more liberal, more one way of thinking. They're not very open. So I think when they also have this like set mindset of therapy and how it's supposed to look and like, oh, I'm supposed to like let them talk about what they want to talk about. I'm supposed to let them do this, just let them do that, which is true. Like we want to let the client lead and everything, but like there comes a point where you have to like, okay, like challenge the person and like push them a little bit. So
did you and I talk about my last talk therapy experience?
I think we probably did, yeah.
Okay, because I was gonna say it's funny that you say that because that sounds a lot like my last lady I saw. Oh yeah, I think we did talk about it.
Yeah, I think we talked about it. But anyways, I all that to say is I'm very happy that I chose to be a social worker and that I have more traditional values and I think very differently than most. I have a Christian background, so I think that makes me more I don't know. I won't I don't want to speak too much on that, but I don't think I'm the best either because I'm still like so fresh in the field. Like I don't know anything.
Well, if you were in the best in the field as someone who just entered it, then that'd be pretty bad for the field.
Exactly. But also like I graduated with like 500 people from my master's program, and that
Did
made
you
me feel,
really?
oh my gosh, yes. And I
That's
felt
huge.
awful. I know. I was like, so idiots can literally just come in and get this degree and like go out into the field. And, a lot of us can't pass the licensure exam. We go to grad school for 2 years, and these teachers are like, take your time with the paper, you can turn it in when you're ready. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I appreciate that, especially because it's grad school and like it is hard and like the work was hard at times, but like I was making straight 100s on projects. That
Hell yeah.
But that also made me a little concerned. I'm like, I don't know anything. So I go to take my licensure exams and I'm failing the first couple times I take the exam.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't make me feel good. And I know I'm a good social worker based on like my supervisor and like I was hired on from my internship right away before I graduated. And so it's like I know I'm good at what I do and I can learn well, but like I'm really worried for
The
the rest.
profession.
Yeah, the profession itself, like, is there integrity? So, that's
Yeah.
what I think.
Well, if anything, if the army, being in the army has taught me anything, it's that you should have no trust in large institutions. So
It's true.
it's funny how skeptical that's made me. Christian and I were talking about, I'm not going to go into details too much, but earlier we were talking about the surprisingly low quality of people in the military, especially in like leadership positions. And
Toby, I think you and I have just become like two of the most cynical people on the planet.
I have become so cynical.
Like,
And
it's
I think I've always been a little cynical because like I consider
I
myself
think it's
smart. And so because I consider myself smart, I question things and I want to
sure,
argue
yeah.
with people
I think
and
it's
I want
smart
to
to
understand.
be somewhat cynical, but as of like it's honestly insane. Like I've noticed a huge change in you and me and how cynical we are. And
I feel the same. I feel the same. Like I feel like I can't trust anything. And I think that's useful to an extent,
absolutely.
but sometimes it takes you down like a dark hole, the cynicism. And if you go too deep, it's kind of tough to dig yourself out. It's also tough to like question everything in life and continue to make day-to-day decisions and live. And I don't know where we're going with that, but
We're just cynical now.
cynicism can be a wild ride. Speaking of cynicism, one of the things that I wanted to talk about earlier, Christian.
Why
Um,
didn't you bring it up?
yeah, so the House of Representatives published the investigation that they had for the January 6th attack on the Capitol. So it's basically looking into President Trump and how what he did and said affected those people storming the Capitol. And it's a whole report. It looks pretty thorough. They published that like a week or so ago, and I've read like 65 pages out of like 844. So for anyone listening, I'm going to put the link in the bio, but I think it's important because I think trust in government institutions is at an all-time low. This report seems pretty thorough. I think everyone wants to know, like, all right, like, is Donald Trump to blame? Because I feel like there's two scenarios or two options for what happens, right? So either what Donald Trump said was true and people conspired against him and prevented him from being elected as president, and then therefore Joe Biden is illegitimate as the president, or Donald Trump lied and defrauded the American people and caused the deaths of however many people that died in the whole thing in the Capitol for
It
no.
was one person. One person died,
That's not true. Multiple police officers died. One protester died. However,
but
multiple
was shot by a
officers
police
died.
officer whose name they won't reveal.
The police officer?
Yeah.
I don't want to go too far down this tangent, but I believe that police officer was well within their rights. And those protesters are lucky that more of them didn't die. Right. So if I was the Secret Service or the Capitol Police and I was watching people break through the windows and I was protecting Congress, I can tell you that I probably would have shot them.
They
Okay.
were
Because
letting people walk through the front door.
I mean, the videos that I saw, people were breaking through the glass
They were doing
to
both.
get in. So those police officers, I think, were well within their rights because that was a very violent action that they were taking. They were just trying to protect the Congress people, and they're
So
lucky that more of
you
them didn't die.
So you're kind of on the side of like you didn't like that people stormed the Capitol.
I'm just saying, if I was a police officer in that moment and I was protecting the people in Congress and I was in a federal building that those people had no right to be in, and they were busting through the glass and they're acting as a mob and taking violent actions, which breaking through like, the windows and like the windows of the doors, like that's violent action. I'm saying I would potentially be inclined to shoot them. And I think that officer was well within his or her right to shoot that woman that died. And she was also an Air Force veteran, and she knew better. So,
So where do you?
But anyway, let me back up. Let me back up. It's important to know. I feel like it's important to know what happened and whose fault it was, because that's going to affect how you feel about a bunch of different government institutions, and I think it's going to affect how you vote and how you decide certain things. So I think everyone should go read this report that I'm talking about, because it's important. It's important to know. What were you saying, Christian?
I forgot. You went off on a tangent and I forgot. I don't know.
You remember.
Try. Don't tell me what to do.
Police officers. Capitol. I love this game.
So I'm not saying I'm pro or against the Capitol, whatever you want to call it, insurrection or.
Well, if you haven't read the report, I don't really care what you think right now.
That's fair, but let's look at the. Let's
got
look at
him.
Got me.
He said, "Bitch."
But I mean, to be fair, you've only read 64 pages of 844.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say this earlier. So if you're listening to this and you're interested in reading, sorry, real quick, the executive summary is like 50 pages, around that. Skip the forewords, just go right to the executive summary.
Just go right into it.
Just go right to the executive summary and then like go from there. Like read what you want to read from there. Because the whole thing, 844 pages, super fucking long. But the like anyone can read 50 pages. But like, yeah, if you're listening, I think everyone should read it. Whether it takes you a day or a week or a year to read that thing, I think everybody should read it.
Christian,
go right to the executive summary. What's that?
Christian doesn't know how to read.
Christian, you call me and I'll read it to you.
Okay.
Christian and I, we should narrate the executive summary on a podcast for people that have trouble.
You should read all 800 pages on the podcast.
So
then it's an audiobook.
It would be an audiobook. I would be for that, but I don't think I have a very good voice. I have kind of a nasally voice. I don't think people would be interested in that. Christian, on the other hand, has a better voice for that type of thing and a great mustache. I don't know if that applies here, but
that is facts.
I'm sorry for interrupting you, Christian.
Twice.
Christian, you there?
Huh?
What were you saying?
Well, I don't even know what was up.
You said I don't know if you're for or against it, but
okay. So let's look at the broad. Just I'm gonna play. Toby, why aren't you answering? You said if I called you, you'd read it to me.
I literally answered. Hello?
Should I three-way in?
I'm not gonna read it to you right now, Christian. We're recording a podcast.
Oh, all right.
Oh, all right.
I'm hanging up. You're dumb.
I am not.
Anyway.
We're listening. We're waiting for you.
Go on. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot where it was.
I think it's important though. Like the report seems pretty thorough. Like there's a ton of evidence in there, and like they link everything to the interviews that they did and recorded evidence. So like whatever side that you're on, I think it's important to read this stuff and then decide based off of what you know after reading it. So that's what I think. I don't know. Does this matter to you? Do you think it's important to know what happened? Because I feel like either way, like, do you agree with what I said? Like, there's kind of like conspiracy on one side or the other. So like either Donald Trump was conspired against, or he like lied to the public and kind of defrauded the American people. So I feel like either way, it's pretty significant. Like it's pretty significant, right?
I really don't think that anybody had a role in it except for I know there were, well, I don't know, but I kind of believe that there were undercover Antifa people, and then I also just believe there were genuinely mad American people that were very much MAGA supporters and stuff like that. Now, to go and break the windows and all that stuff, I don't think that was encouraged by Donald Trump, but I think it was the outcome of very angry people. Like, I don't really feel like I don't understand why there's an investigation, I guess. I mean, is that stupid for me to say that? But,
Well,
like,
the investigation was partly into looking whether or not that there was voter fraud.
so why can't we just focus on that? Like, the outcome of the whole election
Because
was,
people died.
no,
People
I
died. Police
understand that,
officers
but
died,
why
and
did
that
people
one
die?
protester that was shot died. Like,
Why did people die?
why did people die?
Because they
Well, see,
stormed the Capitol because they
Because
were
yeah,
angry.
because there was a huge mob that broke into a federal building and caused a bunch of
They were
damage to
angry.
federal property and assaulted police officers.
I don't know. I
Do
just,
you
like,
not care
so
why that happens?
were so Toby, were there not those in the late 1700s in England when we were trying to separate ourselves from them,
Were there not what?
like the angry mobs?
I mean, I'm sure there was angry mobs.
Sure, there were. So I don't know. My take on the whole storming of the Capitol or whatever that crap is, like we were like the United States as a whole, regardless of who you like politically, they're both criminals, federal criminals. But regardless of who you like politically, the United States was born on the backs of cannons. You know, so what is so wrong? Because we've done it before. What is so wrong about storming a Capitol or making a big crazy protest? Because we literally fought a war and hundreds, actually no, thousands died in a war sort of pertaining to something similar to this in regards of like, what am I trying to say?
I hear what you're saying. So the
How is
problem,
this year
though,
different than 1760 or 50 or whatever when we were really pissed at the England?
yeah.
How is that so different? You know what I mean?
So I mean, we were like transitioning to a new society at that time. We were trying to establish a new government. But
Right.
the problem is that if what Donald Trump says is true, then our government system is completely broken and we
It
can't
is.
trust it whatsoever. Right. So if that's true, then I think we need to investigate it and see whether or not what he's saying is correct. Because that's a big deal. Then like no one should care about voting at all. And it's like 100% fraudulent if people can come in and whatever
that's literally
do
how I
these things
feel,
to
though.
falsify votes. What's that?
That's how I feel. Like,
So if
look,
that's how you feel, then you should read this report and see if the evidence shows that
well,
that's
I
true.
feel like, no, I feel like I can't trust anybody anyways because, like, even the people writing this report are probably just like,
So if you can't trust anybody, why do you trust what Donald Trump said?
oh, I don't. I'm just saying, like, I don't think it was necessarily what he did say that caused such chaos that day.
So this report, it has like events and it has witnesses that said, hey, this is what I saw happen. It has other people that corroborate it. And then it shows, hey, this person said this at this time. This person said this at this
Right.
time. So you
Right.
get a pretty clear picture. And I think if you read it, you'll be able to look at that and see, all right, like this finding makes sense because I agree that this evidence says this, or maybe you'll say, well, this one finding I don't agree that the evidence that they presented means that. I think maybe it's something else or maybe it's ambiguous. So I think
Mhm.
on whatever side that you sit, if you read this report, it'll help
I'm
you.
gonna read it. I'm gonna click the link in the bio and read it.
Click the link in the bio. Check it out. Just go right to the executive summary.
Skip the forward.
I mean, you can read the forwards if you want, but
No,
they're a
I'm
little,
down to read it.
they're a little biased. I think you should just go right to the summary because the summary just says like, I mean, I've only read like half.
Yeah, so the forward is bias. That's like, that right there would deter me from reading the executive summary,
Well,
but I will read it.
it's
But I
because it's because the forwards were written after the report was complete. So those people have already made the decision.
right.
Whereas the executive summary is just like like on
Facts.
this date at this time, so and so alleged that this happened, and then these people said this. These people also said it happened, and then on this day, so it's just like here's what these people said. Like here's the evidence that backed it up, and it's very like systematic in that way. But the Fords, I mean, like Nancy Pelosi wrote one, and then Liz Cheney was the deputy whatever of the committee, and then the committee or whatever leader wrote another Ford. So there are three Fords, and all of them are like, this is important because whatever democracy. And but I don't know what they say doesn't really matter to me, but just go to the executive summary, and then it's got all the evidence. I mean, you can find everything that they say. They have footnotes of what backs it up, so you can look at all their
I'm gonna go
pieces
read
of
the
evidence.
footnotes first.
Well, I think you should read them in conjunction. I think you should read a statement, and then if you have any doubt whether it's true or not, or whether that assumption or conclusion was true, then you should go to that footnote, go down to the evidence, and then listen to that audio recording or read that memo or whatever for yourself. So on either way, I mean, on whatever side that you're on, I think you should read it. And then if you think there are holes in it, I think you should bring it up. Let the people know. Let the people know what you think. It even says though, in like one of the Fords, I don't know who said it, but one of the people said this is like just an initial investigation and there probably needs to be more. That's what they said. So I just think people should read it.
Click the link in bio.
Click the link and subscribe. Anyway, I don't want to drone on about that.
Christian, what were you gonna say?
I don't see the big deal. I think if you're pissed off, you should storm a government building. Go for it.
I mean, my initial response was like, I don't know, put a little fear in politicians. That seems like the American way, like you said, Christian. We used to tar and feather people. Not that I agree with that, but
I do. Maybe not that, but
well, I've been listening to, I don't know what all you have planned for this podcast tonight, but I have been watching the speaker election all day, which I probably shouldn't have been watching, but
yeah,
I consumed way too much of it. And it's just so annoying because this lady gets up and she's like, I'm not speaking to you people here in the room. I'm speaking to the American people, and this is their house, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, shut up. You guys don't do nothing for us. Nothing. And I'm just like, but I will not be heard. I'm an American person. My voice is not going to be heard. And she was like, we want your voice to be heard. I'm like, how? How do I call you right now? Like, please tell me. I know how to email my senators here in Ohio.
And I'm sure representatives have a website where you can email.
Right.
But it just has to be read by like 10 people before it gets to her. That's all.
Exactly. And the fact is that it's so sad. We're supposed to elect a speaker of the whole house of two parties, yet we have two parties who are completely wanting their own person to run the whole house. So it's like, shouldn't we be trying to convince both parties to pick one person rather than trying to convince two separate parties to pick their one person? Because then it's just going to be this back and forth. And the same with, I mean, obviously the same with the president. It's like, why are we not trying to convince two parties to vote for one person?
Yeah, well, everything's so polarized. I mean, everyone agrees with that. I just wish we had more options with mainstream parties. I think part of the problem is that, like, for most, like for the presidential races, states are generally like one winner takes all. There are only a few states where like the electoral votes can get split up between people. So I think that favors this two-party system. So I don't know if there's more we could do to promote more parties. Like I think it'd be fantastic if like the Green Party and the Libertarian Party, those are probably the two most prominent like independent or like third option parties. I think it'd be great if those became more prominent. And I feel like we're starting to see a shift with that though. Like Tulsi Gabbard is running as an independent for Congress. I forget what seat that she holds, but she broke away from the Democratic Party because she doesn't agree with their values, and I think that's great. Yeah, I hope we see more people from both sides start to break away, so we can have more parties involved because things are very polarized, and It's not great.
Not good.
You know, Toby, I think everyone needs to just break away, reject modernity, embrace tradition, and just, yeah,
Embrace chaos.
embrace chaos and tradition. Yes.
Embrace anarchy.
I'm okay with a little bit of anarchy, whatever.
Well,
I'm fine with that. Somebody's got to do it.
sometimes there's a thin line between anarchy and libertarianism. And if you listen to this podcast, you know that I'm relatively libertarian. So,
all right.
Well, that got real political. I wasn't really expecting it to go there. I think pretty much all politicians are liars, though. So I agree with all the things you were saying, Morgan.
Not only are they liars, they're also criminals.
Yeah, they are criminals. I
That.
think as a rule, they're either idiots and they don't know that what they're saying is totally false, or they're liars and they're doing it knowingly. So each is pretty bad. So I'm not a fan, just about all of them.
We need Jesus.
Some say.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want a theocracy either, but
That's like almost just as bad sometimes,
I was thinking recently, I think part of the problem why there's so many Muslim dominant countries that have committed what we in America consider to be serious human rights violations, like executing journalists who speak out the government, imprisoning and killing people who are gay, stuff we in America consider to be pretty bad. A ton of Muslim countries do it, but I think it's less because they're Muslim, and I think it's more because they're this theocracy, and the people at the top, the powers go into their head and they're saying like, well, this is what God wants, this is what we're going to do, and they're becoming more extreme because they have all that religious power. I think if there were theocracies and regular in other countries that were Christian, I think we'd see similar things that were happening to the Muslim countries. So, I mean, I think our founding fathers were pretty smart in that they advocated for a separation of church and state. I'm not saying that you were advocating for a theocracy, Morgan. I was just something I was thinking about recently.
I'm not. But I think that the scriptures say, like, nations are filled with idols and we should really only be worshiping God. And so, like, I feel like, yes, separating the church and state, but really it's like, how can we keep our worship focused around God and still, like, live in a prosperous society?
But what about those who don't believe in God?
I mean, it wasn't supposed to be like that, but here we are.
I think it's fair. I mean, probably at least half of America is at least agnostic, if not atheist,
So it's kind of just throwing a whole demographic to the wayside almost.
No, I mean, this isn't saying this is going to happen now, but what I believe Jesus intended were for people to believe in God and serve one another, but also still, work and live like these lives, but to not let like rulers and power be a thing. So, I mean, God would like for everybody to believe in him and worship him. Obviously, that's not the case now.
So why even bring up the idea of free will? You know what I mean?
What are you talking about?
Like,
who brought up free will?
no, I'm saying like maybe not free will, but like the free will to believe in whatever you want, right? Did I pick
Sure.
up what you're laying down correctly? Because I don't know, maybe I didn't. I don't know.
Yeah, you have free will to believe in what you want, to believe in God, to choose to follow him or not to follow him. So I guess if you don't follow him, then who are you going to follow? Or what are you going to do?
Right, but
Would you rather choose a life of like where God promises like fulfillment and justice and peace is what he promises is if we follow him in right order and in accord with his will? Or would you rather not follow him and live in a two-party system with riots and all this other stuff?
Does
We're
it
gonna
have to be one or the other though? I feel like
no,
you're saying you can be Christian and live a Christian life, or you can live in the society that we live in today. But Christians do also live in the society that we live in today.
no, I'm not saying you have to choose one of the, it's not really a question of choosing. This is just me saying, like, if I could have it my way, I wouldn't want a what did you call it?
I think I misinterpreted
Theocracy.
what you were saying.
Theocracy. I would just wish that more people would turn away from, like, idolizing government, and I don't know.
I agree with that. I don't think you should idolize government. I think Christian, you sent me a meme earlier. I forget what it was about, but it was the takeaway to me felt like you shouldn't, like, it's dumb to idolize your government. You should put your faith in other things. And I thought that was valid.
Mhm.
I mean, but like I said, I'm a pretty big cynic, so I don't trust any institutions right now.
I think I just misunderstood what you were laying down, which is
How dare you?
sorry.
Well, I think it's a very broad subject. Like, it's a very complex, like, idea, and the thing is, like, we're so far into our society and our culture nowadays where it's like, I mean, I'm speaking from a place of what I believe, like, God intended or God wants of us. And, like, when he created Adam and Eve, like, everything was perfect until the fall. And so really, because the fall, we're gonna be living in a society like this forever until Jesus comes back. Um, if that's what you believe in. If you don't believe in that, then I guess, it's like, well, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
So do you believe that story of the fall to be a literal story?
Yes? Question mark?
All right. Christian and I touched what we feel about taking the Bible literally in one of my earlier podcasts.
Yeah.
Well, that's funny. Well, it's interesting because some people have said that Adam and Eve were, um, it was just like a metaphor. But I do believe they were real people on Earth.
You think that they're originally just two people and that everyone's evolved from those two people?
Yeah. Okay, I went to this creation museum. It's in Kentucky.
Oh boy.
I highly recommend it. It's so cool. And it talks about the Christian view of evolution and the scientific view of evolution and how it's just crazy. I can't even explain it. There's dinosaurs on the ark. Dinosaurs were on the ark.
What do you mean
Small.
dinosaurs were on the ark?
So dinosaurs, so you know how everybody's like, okay, so there were dinosaurs and then there were people. That's like this concept we have.
Yeah, I mean there's evidence of that through the fossil
But
record and through genetic analysis that
but
pretty much
there's
all
also
scientists
evidence.
agree on.
There's evidence that they could have lived at the same time.
That people are dinosaurs? What evidence is there?
Yes, because of Adam and
What do you mean because of Adam? What evidence is there that people and dinosaurs lived at the same time?
there. This museum had it all. It was all there.
So they're probably liars.
They're not liars.
The fossil evidence of humans, modern humans like Homo sapiens sapien goes back a few 100,000 years, maybe 300,000 years, and then close relatives like
They were
the other
animals.
species
They
of the
weren't
genus
people.
Homo.
They were animals. They weren't people. They weren't human creatures. They don't think like
wasn't
us.
human?
The Homo sapiens and like
Homo sapiens are not human?
and how they formed.
That means human.
So do you think Homo sapiens are not human?
I think that there's a different understanding of it.
No, I don't think so. I think I'm a Homo sapien.
So what's the understanding?
That like Adam and Eve were formed by God, like out of nothing, and he made them.
Okay, so are they genetically the same as us who are Homo sapiens?
Yes, but there's a different like what okay, so like
How
these
long ago do you think Adam and Eve lived, approximately?
I don't remember the numbers, but it was like the way they had it set up. I'm
Morgan,
just
I can tell you from someone who knows a lot of Catholic theology that this creationism thing is not in line with the Catholic Church, what the Catholic Church believes.
maybe, I don't know.
No,
But
I know for a fact, like I've talked with priests and theologians about this and this creationism that there were like dinosaurs on the ark. And I mean, we could talk about it logically in philosophy outside of theology, but like that is not in line with what the Catholic Church teaches and is actually probably against it in some ways.
yeah, I haven't talked to my priest about it yet. I did ask him before I went. I was like, "Is this Creation Museum in Kentucky theologically correct?" And he was like, "It's here and there." But I will say it was very well written. It was very convincing. So I don't know if I believe it or not, but I do feel that Adam and Eve were on Earth. They had children, and that's the lineage of David and Moses, Abraham. Like it's all in the Bible.
So what about like the what is it? Human genetic variation. What happens there? What's your idea there?
I don't know.
All right.
So I mean, like people have done DNA analysis, and in particular, like the analysis of the DNA in our mitochondria. And so you can see where humans are linked, and you can see how far
I
back
think
in
God works
time that.
outside of that though sometimes.
What's that?
Well, I believe that like God does what he wants. I mean,
I wasn't arguing against your point. I was saying that the idea of all humans being involved from one set of parents could actually be in line with science, maybe.
yeah, I'm saying the same thing.
Yeah. Well, how far back do you think that Adam and Eve lived? Because I think that's important.
That's yeah.
I think it was not like I think what we're coming to understand is the earth isn't as old as we think it is.
Well, how old do you think it is? Because I think modern science says that the Earth is like 4.5 billion years old,
Yeah, it's
and
not that old.
that it's
Like
not.
no,
So, what evidence is there of that? That it's not as young?
it's not as old.
Or sorry, yeah, that it's yeah, my mistake.
I
What
think it's
evidence is there
younger
that
than
it's not as old?
well, I can't remember everything I read, but it made a lot of sense at the time.
Okay.
I'm not great at arguing these things.
I don't, it seems like there's a lot of facts that need to go into convincing me and Christian of this argument that people lived at the same time with dinosaurs, because the fossil record shows that what we would consider dinosaurs lived, I don't know, somewhere in the span of like hundreds of millions of years ago. And modern humans, Homo sapiens, the fossil record shows that we are around a few 100,000 years ago, and that like closely related, like other species in the Homo genus, they were around maybe like a few million years ago.
I mean, are you like open to even changing your mind if the facts are presented?
Well, yeah, but I want to know what the facts are. I need to know the facts that
I have
shows
to
like
look them up.
when someone finds a fossil and they say, all right, like we can date this fossil because we look at the carbon dating and we can estimate the age, like that's good evidence to me. So if someone found either, Homo sapien fossils that were around at the same time as what we would consider dinosaurs, or vice versa, dinosaurs just a few million years, um, then I would be more on board with it. I mean, I'm not against the idea of a worldwide flooding, because there's many cultures, not just Christianity, that in their ancient texts that they talk about like a worldwide flooding. And I
Yeah,
think we've talked about this on a podcast before, but based on like the global cycle of the Earth moving into glacial and interglacial stages, so about every 100,000 years we shift in a cycle. We spend about 90,000 years in a glacial cycle, 10,000 years, and a interglacial cycle. The transition between those could maybe result in massive flooding because of the polar ice caps and other ice at the poles melting. And I mean, people have done analysis and studies where they've taken pictures of the landscape and they've looked at the geology and they can say this looks like a massive flood that happened however many years ago. So I'm not against the idea of that. That may have actually happened, which would make sense why so many cultures talk about it. But anyway, the idea that people and dinosaurs are around at the same time, and the idea, like the genetics doesn't make sense of a bunch of animals being in an ark and then that resulting in the genetic diversity that we have today. That doesn't make sense to me.
You gotta have the genetic diversity, or else we'd have all died from,
I'm reading the stuff that I learned at the museum.
Okay. Well, let me know what the facts are, because
I'm gonna come back to you for this so we don't bore the people listening to the podcast, because they're probably like,
there's a lot of creationists out there. I just don't think it's based on any real evidence or any real facts. I don't even think it's based on logic. Like, you could maybe convince me something using logic and philosophy without any hard facts.
Sure.
But I don't think they have that either. I think the problem is, it seems that what people that are creationists argue, their primary evidence is what's written in the Bible. But how do you know that what's in the Bible is true factually?
That's like what faith is to like believe in the things that can't be seen.
So there's certain things that I believe because of my faith, and then there's certain things that I believe because it's scientifically tested and proven. I don't think there has to be necessarily a conflict of interest, but when you take things and say, well, the science is wrong because I'm going to take these things that were written literally, I don't think it takes into the account, one, that the Bible is like a translation of a translation of a translation. Thousands of years, things weren't really copied efficiently. People were literally handwriting things in the Bible to copy it, which could have led to a bunch of different transcription problems. And I don't think the truth of Christianity is invalidated by the books of the Bible not being literal. Like, there's a lot of truth there. Even if you don't believe that those things literally happen, there's still a ton of important and good truth.
I guess I didn't know that there was I didn't know that being a creationist was like a title.
I mean, it's like
learning this.
It's like a field of thought. Creationism is a field of thought. I mean, that'd probably be the best way to describe it. There's a lot of Christians in America, I don't know about other places, but Christians in the US that are creationists that believe all that. But
anyways, I went to this creation museum. I had a great time. We loved it. Made a ton of sense in my brain. I was like, yes, yeah. Like, everything was making sense to me, and it went along with the science that I've learned as well. So that's all I gotta say. I'm not arguing with anybody.
Well, that's what we're here for. We're here to argue about stuff.
We need argument. Without argument, no one will learn anything,
What's a podcast? Anyways, next topic.
Man, this got real serious. Talking about politics. We talked about religion. Crazy. This is way better than what Christian and I recorded earlier. Holy smoke. Christian, this is why we need to have consistent guests, because you and I sometimes.
I think sometimes you and I are able to generate some absolute just chaos online.
Yeah. I feel like we both have to be on, though.
Well, you gotta stick to the original content. T and C. Don't stray too far from the OG, okay?
Are you saying we shouldn't have you on here as a guest?
All right, goodbye.
No.
Oh.
I don't know what you're arguing.
Exactly what you just said.
I'm just saying it's okay if it's just you guys every now and then. Keep things
I agree, but when it's like real dry and not very interesting, and Christian and I are just like twiddling our thumbs, looking at each other on camera, then I don't think that's really what the viewers want.
I don't mind though. I'll put that out there. I don't mind looking at you.
I don't mind looking at you either. Even though your hair is just like straight up immoral, how long it is.
Oh yeah.
Like it's like an immoral attack for someone in the army to see you with hair that long. It disgusts me. I'm just joking, Morgan. Christian and I were talking about this earlier at some point. People in the army, if they see you with like a big mustache or hair that's too long, people get like offended. Like they take it as like a personal attack. And it's like, how dare you?
I was just listening to podcast number 10, and you guys were talking about that exact topic, about how somebody looked at you and said, we don't do that here.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because I worry that Christian and I repeat things too much on the podcast, and now I'm thinking that that is the case. But yeah, no, people do. People get like really offended, and it's like, hey man, like if you want to tell me that I'm doing something wrong according to what the army says, that's fine. But like, why you got to make it so personal?
Yeah.
People are like, how dare you? Like, why would you ever do something like that?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are how many people do you think are entering the army these days?
Hopefully not very many.
How many people are
like, do you think it's less or more? Like, do you think it's decreased or increased, people wanting to join the military?
I can tell you that the army has, for the past few years, has failed to meet its recruiting goal, maybe for the past several years, or at least come very close. Recruiting has been a problem. Part of it, though, is that the army is so large now. I think we may be as big as we ever have been, except when we were like fighting World War II.
I was gonna say, is that really a problem, Toby? Because we were just talking about having a smaller military.
Well, so yeah, so we were talking about that. I think it's a problem if we don't meet the recruiting targets, because we're going to have organizations that are, at like 70-80% fill, and they're not going to be effective, but they're still going to try to do what that organization is supposed to, but they're going to be short. I think if we like cut the amount of units in the army and then aimed for 100% fill for all of them, or like a 95% fill or whatever, I think that would be better than keeping the organizations that we have and aiming for, 80% fill or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I think we should have less organizations, but have them fully staffed and equipped.
I agree. I agree with that. And I also think if the army could just get away from its ways of institutional inbreeding, if you will.
Can you expand on what you mean by that?
Institutional inbreeding, it's basically doing what you're doing because of the way you used to do it.
But why does everyone say, no, you got to think outside the box? We need creative solutions.
Does everyone say that? I've never met somebody who actually says that.
I hear that all the time, but 100% of the time I heard people say that. There was a by the book way that worked just fine and was like simple and straightforward, easy as you could get. It's like, hey, it's cool that you want to think outside the box, but actually, if you look at this FM, it gives a very simple way of how to do this, and that'll work for us. Like, there's no reason to think that this like 3-step process won't work for us. So why don't we try it like that?
Well, that's fair, but I kind of meant that as like a generality. Like just try maybe not doing everything.
Yeah. So I think
there are certain things. There are certain things, and there's reasons why we have FMs and TMs. There's certain reasons that work, or certain things that work, right? And I don't think we should get away from them. But in some other instances, I think that'd be a good idea to cut the old institutional inbreeding.
I agree with that statement for sure. I think it's a little bit of a paradox, though. The only thing about the Army that's continued to impress me is the quality of the Army publications. Not all of the old ones are good, but like all the newer ones that are coming out. And I mean, a lot of the older ones are good. If you actually read them and understand them in context, like it's extremely rare to encounter a problem that you can't solve by following the FM or the AR. I think the problem is people that don't really know them, or they take one little part and they're like, we got to do it like this and fix our problem. And it's like, well, if you read it, it doesn't really apply if you take it out of context. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then the only unit that I've been in where doing things by the book wouldn't work was when I was in Korea. And I mean, that was my first of 4 duty stations. So I was in Korea, Washington, Kuwait, and then now here. So that was the only place where if you didn't do things by the book, it wouldn't work out. But it was still useful to look at that, be like, all right, what does the book say? It says to do this. All right, well, 50% of that works. And if we do the other 50%, it'll cause us to fail. So let's just stick with that 50. But anyway, institutional inbreeding, I agree with that. People say, let's just keep doing it like this, but people have been doing it dumb and not really by the book the whole time. Final answer. Morgan, go ahead. What do you think?
Wait, well, Morgan, hang on. What was your initial question? We went off on something totally weird. I don't remember.
You answered it. I think you said less people are joining nowadays. You guys were potentially talking about wanting a smaller military, but there's the most people ever in it right now.
Like as if you look at like the last 10 years, 10 to 15 years as a period, there's the most. I don't know what we look like right now compared to like 2005, but before like 2001, I'm sure we're bigger than we were before 2001.
Oh, yeah.
So I definitely, my perception, I don't know any like hard numbers. My perception is that the Army is struggling to meet its recruiting goal. For anyone out there who's listening and thinking about joining the Army, I can tell you from talking to many previous Army recruiters that they flat out lie to meet their numbers and get people to enlist. Christian can corroborate that, I'm sure. Like, not even joking. People flat out lie and they like joke about the lies that they told the people to get them to enlist. And honestly, like it's fucking embarrassing and awful. So expect your recruiter to lie to you if you're trying to join. Not that everyone shouldn't join. There's good reasons, but anyway, yeah, I don't know if Christian agrees. I definitely think that the Army would be smaller. I am very dissatisfied with the quality of people that we have in the Army, especially the quality of people in leadership positions. But I think it's because we're too big. You know, there's only so many people that are qualified and a good fit to be leaders in the Army within the U.S. population, because we're just a cross section of the population. So I think we're too big. The size that we are, it doesn't meet the Toby standards. I don't think it meets the Army standards, but people in the Army disagree with me on that. So,
well, I just think that's interesting because we just gave how much money to our Army in a $1.7 trillion package?
They gave like a 6% raise in the base pay. I don't know what else as far as the military budget, but the 6% base pay is like enough to cover inflation, and I don't know if it covers 100% of the inflation, but no, I think we spend like a ludicrous amount on the military.
Oh, yeah.
On the military.
I was pretty pissed about that because obviously I work in populations who are just like.
So what are your if you're upset about that, what are your thoughts about us giving money to Ukraine?
I'm not a big fan of that either.
Nice.
Good. So do I get to stay on the podcast?
Well, yeah, Christian and me especially, do not love our foreign policy stance of giving buttloads of money to everyone.
No, definitely not.
Because there's no accountability. We don't really know how it's being spent, and there's a lot of reasons to believe that it's being spent for very bad reasons or whatever. Corruption and
so bad.
Buzzword 1, buzzword 2. It's no good.
Okay, I have another opinion. You might not like this.
Go ahead.
I wish we would have just sent some of our military men to Ukraine to help them fight Russia.
Yeah.
I much rather would have seen Christian go kill them than give them our money. And like, why would that have been such a bad thing if we would have just sent them over there? I do know why it would have been a bad thing, because Russia's like, oh, we have nuclear bombs. But like,
you're correct. Yeah. That's the biggest reasons that no one has sent troops to Ukraine to fight Russia, because Russia's kind of holding. Actually, President Zelensky said this when he came to the U.S. a week or two ago. He said Russia is holding the world hostage by threatening to use nuclear weapons if anyone intervenes. And he's 100% correct. He's 100% right. That is exactly what's happening. Everyone's afraid.
Mm.
It is
Now, will they
certainly,
actually do it? I doubt it.
yeah. I mean, maybe not. It's a risk, but I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I'm kind of a all in or all out kind of person. The
Mhm.
US, especially in recent years, has taken a very like limited engagement strategy,
Mhm.
um, with like being involved in other nations. And I mean,
Well, it's because everybody was like, "Oh, we need to get out of Afghanistan," and they were pushing that, and I think they saw how that went, and I don't know. I feel like there is a reason we do
yeah.
have our military involved.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's a reason for everything. I don't know if it's a good reason. Afghanistan was obviously that was executed very poorly. I think everyone agrees on that. I mean, I'm happy that we got out of Afghanistan. I think that was the right move, but the way we did it is wrong. But I mean, yeah, I'm kind of an all in, all out kind of guy. Like I would be okay if we didn't send a single cent. And this is my personal opinion, not the opinion of anyone else. But I would be okay if we didn't send a single cent to Ukraine, and I would be okay if we deployed a bunch of troops and rolled over the entire Russian military. You know, but I think it should be one or the other. I think when you do limited engagements, like just giving them money and weapons, then I think you're prolonging the conflict and actually potentially causing more human suffering and loss of life. So
Mhm.
I kind of rather it be one or the other. Like let's save our money and use it on people here domestically, or let's just go fuck them up and burn down everything. You know?
Yeah. Well, that's just yeah, I work every day with people who are victims, like actual innocent victims in America, and it just leads to one thing to the next. It's like this I have this one woman who I'm helping right now. Her son was murdered and she had to pay for his funeral, which meant she couldn't pay for her rent, so she was evicted. So now she's homeless, sleeping in an office space, and luckily got the funeral expenses reimbursed through our attorney general's office, but now it's like she's having to start over from square one. Like, she still has no money, she's lost her son, and this is just one story that I hear, like, in an hour of my
Yeah.
day at work, you know? And I just would love to see, like, free housing for actual victims of crimes who, like, are recovering from injuries, can't go to work right now because they're injured, and are actually, like, innocent people who have been hurt because of a broken system and a broken criminal system, and so it's like, it's just so like, I get more burnt out over going through the system barriers in our country than I do working with the people and, like, their trauma. Like, I could do that all day, I can talk to them and fine. It's finding them housing, food, basic daily needs that is literally so hard. It's so hard.
How much do you think that should be the government's responsibility, and how much do you think that should be the community's responsibility as
I
far
think
as
it's
like
both.
food and housing specifically?
It's definitely both, but I will say, like, the state, I mean, there's a lot of, like, what are they called? Landlords, slumlords. There's so many slumlords out there now who rent apartments and stuff, and if you like, they don't keep up with the properties, there's rats, there's feces, and then you call your community service line, like for Columbus, the 311 line to go out there and, like, investigate your landlord. They don't do it. They don't do it. So, like, the state and that's obviously from a lack of funding for the state, which is probably coming from the government.
Yeah.
So it's all connected. So, like, our state is struggling because our government is struggling. Our community is struggling because our state's struggling because the government's struggling. Like, they're all in bed with each other, you know? So it's like, I just think when I see a president sign off on $1.7 trillion that
A lot of
doesn't
money.
that's a lot of money. And to see it going to the army when I have I just thought of you guys and how much you guys complain all the time. Like, oh, I hate the army. And I'm like,
We do complain a lot.
Why are they giving them more money? Toby lives in a house with 4 bedrooms. He doesn't need more money.
You got me. As a captain, I get paid way more than I probably should. In this particular job, I would say other jobs, the productivity was equivalent to the pay I'm getting now, maybe,
But okay, I'm a social worker. Imagine how much I'm getting paid.
yeah, but like, what do you think if you look at the military budget? What percent do you think the salaries are? If you take into account the salaries of specifically uniformed personnel, it's got to be. It's got to be. I have no idea what that is, but it's got to be minuscule.
For sure, I believe that it's probably a low percent.
I don't want to talk about this now, but after I'm in the military, I want you to ask me about equipment and property accountability, specifically related to
Put this in my phone.
CENTCOM.
Can you spell it?
It's like Central Command, CENTCOM. I'm not ready to talk about this right now, but I would like to talk about it.
I'm just gonna put the thing you just said in supplies.
Just say equipment and supplies accountability. Toby. CENTCOM, CENTCOM.
Okay, CENTCOM. I'm gonna say topic for future ?
And if anyone from the Army Inspector General Office is listening, you should give me a call.
I'm not a part of this. Don't call me.
It's pretty bad, Morgan. It's pretty bad here. I think it's just like I don't think it's an Army specific thing. I think it's like
I don't want to
the government.
Like, it will probably piss me off.
Yep. There's a lot of like real things that happen, not just like, man, my boss is fucking dumb, but there's a lot of things that it's like, holy shit, like that is fraud.
So why can't we
waste of government taxpayer dollars?
Like, oh yeah. Another thing that we think, this is a topic of me and my coworkers, is at the hospital, whenever somebody comes in and say they have like a warrant or they have like a missed court date or something like that, fair, they need to go and they need to be processed and all that stuff. We have these patients guarded with 2 cops sitting outside their door for 12-hour shifts, just sitting there, guarding them in their beds.
Morgan, I'm telling you, the wages, especially of people like that, is such a small issue compared to all these other things.
I'm sure it is.
But I'm not saying that you are incorrect and that money is maybe being wasted. I don't know all the background, but I'm not ready to talk about any of this stuff yet, but I will be once I'm out of the Army.
Okay, I might have to go soon.
What do you mean you might have to go? This is just getting good.
Christian just left.
Don't trust these government institutions. That's the takeaway of episode 12. What's that?
I could talk about that all day. That's why I'm just like, oh, for me, it makes me frustrated. But instead of turning to, I turn to religion and I turn to my faith and I'm like, God, how can I get out of this? How can I escape this? Like, I don't want to be a part of this corruption. So that's kind of going back to my point earlier, is like, I haven't figured a way out yet. I don't think I have a way out. But it just
I agree with you that it's much better to have faith and hope in God rather than the US government. I think that is a good line of thinking.
But it's super hard to go to work every day.
You're telling me, sister.
which is what leads us to being depressed all the time, is because we see these broken systems and we're a part of it and we're being abused in it.
I agree. I think that's been the biggest cause of my issues with depression, is seeing all this stuff and not being able to change anything. No matter how hard I work, seeing the insanity and being part of the insanity.
Exactly.
Probably being insane myself, if we're all being honest.
Oh, and that's why I'm just like, well, can I just get out of it And like,
And that's what Christian and I are doing. We're calling it quits. 5-6 years. That's enough time to give it a shot.
but you're
I'm
gonna
not.
have
I'm
to
not
go
making a
work
difference.
for
But
another large system and be a
that's not
teacher
true.
there.
I'm going to work for myself.
Oh, entrepreneur.
Entrepreneur. Don't even know how to spell entrepreneur. Name that song.
I can't read.
Yeah, that's why I gotta work for myself. I don't even care if I'm unsuccessful for a bit.
I want to work for myself too.
I got a bit of time with like savings and stuff that I'll be able to work for myself and be okay. So
Because you got all that cash flow from Joe
as as a
Biden.
captain, I make a good amount of money. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I probably make more than any of our other friends, except for Will, who's a engineer. And we have friends that are in their residency that are MDs. As soon as they're out of the residency, they're probably going to make more than me, but I make more than them right now. So like the first few years as a captain in the military, like you make more than 90-95% of your peers for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not worth it. It's not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
If they paid me $100,000, I would stay in for one more year. And like I don't know.
It's worth $100,000.
For $100,000. I don't know if they said, "Hey, if we give you $200,000, would you stay in for 2 years?" I don't think I could take that deal. That's how I feel.
Hmm. So what does 1 year difference make?
That's just too long. I just know what suffering comes with being in the military.
Yeah.
So the money itself would not necessarily be enough.
I'm just the enlisted scum. I'm
Freaking scum. I mean, if you consider medical benefits, though, your earnings are solid.
I just want to lay down, so I'm gonna be down here.
All right, no doubt, no doubt.
all right.
Can I like do this? There we go.
You're crazy.
Well, I sit all day. I just need to lay horizontally.
All right.
You should stand up and walk around. It's good for you.
Oh, I don't want to do that.
Well, you complained about it.
No, I'm happy now. I'm horizontal.
You're crazy. There's a cap on general officer pay that's less than members of Congress, I think. Did you know that?
That sounds about right.
Like general officers, they can only make up to, I don't remember. I want to say it's like $180,000, $200,000, which is still a lot amount of money per year, right? But there are like the president makes like $400,000 a year or something, and like members of Congress make like 200 or 250.
Dude, that's what
Some
I don't want to know.
somewhere in that ballpark. Like, do you think like a 4-star general who's like leading like all of the operations in the Middle East should make less than
No,
some guy from the House of Representatives for Rhode Island?
no, definitely they should make
You know?
more. I just don't like anybody in Congress at all.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say that like once you become a general, you're a politician. A lot of people in the military say that, at least. I think that's pretty accurate.
That's
Have,
funny.
having spoke to a fair amount of general officers.
Yeah.
I mean, Christian would say that all commissioned officers are politicians, and he'd be at least partially right.
We don't need them. We don't need them. I've done well without them.
Well, Christian and I were talking about earlier. I think this is a fair point to bring up to the people listening to this podcast. The reason that we have enlisted personnel like Christian and commissioned personnel like myself, it stems from when the US was a classist society and we had highborn people and more lowborn people. So if you're from like a wealthy family, you would join the military and be a commissioned officer and automatically have responsibility. And if you weren't like a landowning family or anything like that, then you would enlist and be at the bottom of the barrel and not trusted with anything. And I don't think that makes sense in today's society, but it's kind of just like a holdover from that. And Christian and I were talking about earlier offline about, well, I was talking about how I would restructure the military and I would throw out this enlisted commissioned perspective, because there's a lot of people that are enlisted that have way more experience and would probably do a better job of leading than the commissioned officers that were their counterparts, like the commanders. But you gotta like start at the bottom. You could be like top of the enlisted side in 20-25 years, but then if you become a commissioned officer, then you're kind of like back down at the bottom of the totem pole on the commissioned officer side, which is a little silly. But anyway, I don't know if that makes sense, but it stems from when we were a classist society. And I think that's like a bad holdover. I think we should try to move past that. And I think we would be more effective as an organization if we did.
Agreed.
Right? I think it should just be more of a linear promotion. So like what I said earlier should be a relatively linear promotion, to where you start out and you have a specialty, and then once you're good at that job, then you can lead like a few people doing that job, and then like you can do a few more people and then kind of scale up from there. Or you're just a specialist who become good in your craft, and then you get paid more because you're really an expert in that technical side of things. So the problem is that both the officer side and the NCO side, you have to take leadership positions to keep getting promoted. So like I've seen a ton of people, especially when I was a platoon leader, young soldiers, that they are excellent at their job. Like I worked with these guys that were rock stars, like some of the best soldiers I ever worked with. Like as far as the technical proficiency at their job, like they were phenomenal, like through the roof. But they were getting out of the Army because they didn't want to have to take a leadership job, because they knew how crappy it was going to be, and they knew they were going to hate it, and they knew that they probably weren't going to be that good at it. So like, no, I'm going to get out of the Army. But if they could continue working that same job, they would have stayed in. So the Army's losing people because of that. But I don't know if that's going to change.
It probably won't.
But like, have you seen that on your side, Christian? Have you seen people that got out of the Army because they were soldiers that didn't want to be an NCO?
Oh, absolutely. Especially more towards like my side of the house. Uh, when you can honestly only be a quote unquote sniper for, you know,
Yeah, yeah, you
maybe
told me about
maybe
that.
maybe 2 or 3 years till you get promoted out of it.
Yeah,
And I got promoted out of it like a year and a half, 2 years ago, I guess, to where I'm just kind of like the section leader, like the admin guy, the guy who doesn't really do anything anymore. And I can't honestly, I can't tell you how many times I've seen guys say, "Well, I'm not going to get to do this anymore. This job I really like, this job I'm really good at, so I'm not going to do this anymore."
yeah.
And I get, I entirely get it. It happened to me, and it's ridiculous. It's honestly like such a negative investment too. You school these guys up, you train these guys up so much just to promote them out of a position.
Yeah,
Like that's a terrible investment. That doesn't make any sense.
I agree. I don't know. I don't know when this whole up and out thing started, but I don't like it.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah,
But what do we know?
we don't know nothing, man. You and we've just been in for like 6 years. We don't know anything.
We're just a bunch of losers, man.
Bunch of dummies.
Bunch of long-haired hippies with mustaches now.
Well, you're a long-haired hippie, not me.
The fuck do we know?
I got short hair. We don't know nothing.
I'm just here. Hello.
Well, we're glad.
Morgan, go on. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I don't know. I'm excited for you guys to get out of the military. And
We are very excited as well.
I hope I'm not finished my sentence. And I hope you guys find peace and happiness.
Thank you. I'm not going to cross my fingers for happiness, but I think I'll find peace. It'll be more peaceful, at least, than being in the Army.
Hey, I'm just happy all the time. You should just try that, Toby. Just try being happy all the time.
Oh, I never thought about that. My bad. All right. I guess I'll try that. I mean,
I used to be happy all the time, and then I realized, oh, hey, I'm not actually that happy.
Oh, actually, I'm a liar.
Stop lying to myself. Well, now I'm gonna sit back up.
All right.
I did have a guy tell me at work recently, he thought I was, this is another officer. He's like, you're so positive and relaxed all the time, man. Like, I don't know how you do it. And I was like, it's funny that you say that because I'm not, but also I have, I, I'm just really good at lying and faking it. I'm always faking it. No, I have gotten better at letting certain things go for sure. I mean, you
Let
know,
it go. Let it go.
yeah, you gotta let certain stuff go as best you can.
I've almost gotten too good at that, I think.
Yes.
Just letting it all go. Like, I don't care. But
Like
Listen,
we need you to hold on to things a little bit more.
no, this is I literally
Not
tell
Toby.
myself this every day when I'm driving to work. The rules are made up and nothing matters. That's what I meditate on to try to keep myself in a good frame of mind. And I
rules
wish
are
I
made
was
up.
joking, but I'm
Points are
honestly
wrong.
not. Because when I don't tell myself that over and over, I just get so angry. And it just got more and more angry. And like I'm not an angry guy. For any of you listening that
No,
know me, you know that I'm not an angry guy, but I am angry all the time.
you're
All the time.
cynical.
I'm not
Yeah,
just cynical. I'm like seriously angry, like yelling and cussing and swearing
Oh.
and like
and
throwing stuff.
you've beaten me.
And like I beat Christian because he's a
All the
lowly
time.
peasant of the peasant class
Yeah, of the enlisted swine.
of the enlisted swine. What are you doing, Morgan?
I'm gonna do the skincare segment of the podcast.
Go ahead. I've tried to talk about my skincare routine, but
I
Christian doesn't let
heard.
me talk about it.
And do you remember me sending you the eye mask?
I do remember. I love it. That's what got me hooked. I have eye masks that I use. Well, recently I haven't been using them as much, but
Is that what you talked about in Audrey's podcast?
I didn't talk about no. I talked about how you sent me the coffee, the pour over coffee.
I forgot that.
I so actually you sent me phenomenal stuff. So like I love the eye mask that you sent me because they had the lavender scent and it was just like super relaxing.
To help you sleep at night.
I
That was
loved that. And it was great because it's like you've been listening about how I have problems with my sleep. And I know that's why you bought the ones that had like melanin in them and stuff. And anyway, so that was awesome. And you sent me like the pour over coffee things that went over just like a mug. And I loved that. That whole experience of like pouring over the hot water on that was awesome. So I bought a pour over coffee set.
You
because
know,
you couldn't have a coffee maker in your room or something.
Yeah.
It was like I don't remember what it was, but you could boil hot water, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a like a hot water heater,
And
whatever.
I know you love your coffee. So
Well, around that time, I switched from energy drinks to coffee, so I needed my caffeine.
yeah. Aw, look at me. I forgot I did that.
I love that. That was like one of the favorite things I got while I was in Kuwait, for sure.
Toby, Morgan, I make candles. And I sent Toby a candle for Christmas, and it's scented. It smells really nice. It's great, and he hasn't given me nearly any praise.
Christian, I've thanked you multiple times, and
You
I've
said
told
thanks for the candle, bro. Merry Christmas, and then Morgan's getting all this. Oh my God, it's just been the best thing ever. Blah, 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 blah. I made that.
Christian,
I
I've
made.
thanked you multiple
Understand?
times. In fact, I have it
You
right
haven't
here.
even lit it.
I have lit it. Fuck
Show
you.
me.
I
Light
have
it
lit
again.
You can see. And I'm not gonna lie to you, Christian. I love this gift and I've used it and I'm very appreciative. Morgan's gift was
Careful.
better.
Huh?
Morgan's gifts was better.
Go fuck
Oh,
yourself.
that's not what I was saying yes to.
It's
I
because
thought you
there was multiple things. It was the coffee and the eye mask, and you sent me like gum,
oh,
and
bunch
you
of
sent me
gum.
like some snacks and stuff that I brought around the office, and everyone really appreciated. Christian,
Yeah,
I still love your gift, but I'm not gonna
you
lie
told
to you, man.
everybody about me.
You can be upset and cover your screen as much as you want, but the reason
Christian,
I talk about Morgan's more.
what can I send you, Christian? Actually, I have a ton of stuff to put candles in, like a bunch of little like mason jar things.
No, they're called
So
vessels. Okay.
vessels, if you send me your address, I will send you some vessels.
I
So
have.
I don't want these things in my house.
All right, that's fair. Just give me your trash. That's fine.
Christian, you're so dramatic.
It's not trash. I bought them from Goodwill. They're very unique. I bought them with my
Not a
ex-boyfriend.
strong argument there.
We were
Got 'em
supposed to
from
make
Goodwill.
candles
Not a great
together.
start.
And we didn't make candles together, so now I'm gonna give you these really cool vessels, and you can do something with it.
Oof, that's tough.
All
It's
right.
called recreation. What's it? No. What's it?
Recreation?
Reincarnation.
Reincarnation.
What? Recreation? What reincarnation? What are we talking about?
I want you to reincarnate these candle jars.
Morgan, scale 1 to 10, how drunk are you right now?
You don't even believe in reincarnation, Morgan.
I'm just ready for bed, low key. I only got through half of my drink.
Well, Toby and I are pouring another probably. So
I'm pouring another right now.
I don't want to be up. This has caffeine in it, and I don't want to be awake any longer.
Why does it have caffeine in it?
Oh,
because it's got a cola. That's fine. The alcohol cancels it out. Everyone knows that scientifically.
And I've been drinking water, so
perfect. You're good. Who needs to sleep every night anyway? You know what I'm saying?
Nah, I work 2 jobs tomorrow.
Now you'll be fine. Probably be better if you didn't sleep, you know?
Yeah.
The more you sleep, the more tired you get. That's a well-known fact.
Toby, have you ever hallucinated from sleep deprivation?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Did we talk about it? I think we talked about that.
Maybe a little bit. No, I don't think we have much though. I think I only really did when I was in airborne school because I was just sleeping because like everyone, like I was in open bay barracks and everyone was a fucking asshole and they were all really loud and we were getting up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, like the last week in particular, and had a little bit of hallucinating. I also had like a dream while I was standing up. Like I fell asleep, had a dream, and then woke up all while I was standing. Like a vivid dream.
It's really impressive.
I think so.
Really fun, actually.
I actually do that kind of daily.
You hallucinate daily? Do you do illicit drugs? Do you do the street drugs of the youths?
Do you take them from your clients and say, I'm going to do this drug, or?
I just do it from being completely tired.
How? What? You do drugs because you're tired?
No, hallucinating.
I'm tired. Ugh. How do you feel about the legalization or decriminalization of marijuana?
I mean, yeah, I feel like we have bigger problems on our hands right now.
What about hardcore drugs?
What about kratom? Do you know what kratom is?
I don't think I've heard of that.
What'd you say, Christian?
Really on this kratom thing, aren't you, Toby? I mean, I agree. I agree entirely, but you're onto it.
Explain.
No. It's just another plant. It's said to have opiate-like effects, but opiate-like effects being it's pain relieving and helps you relax. So it's actually been demonstrated in studies to help people break addictions to actual opiates or like heroin. So it helps decrease the withdrawals that you have, and it's shown to be much less addictive. And it's a painkiller, but it's just a plant. It's like marijuana. It's just like another plant.
I think there's a lot of recovery techniques that are being withheld from us because big pharma just likes to make money and get people addicted to drugs.
Yeah.
So,
that's true.
And I hate big pharma the most.
Yeah, I think there's a connection between like the Puritan society that we have and like demonizing marijuana and these other drugs that are like actually probably a lot healthier than alcohol and opiates, and then big pharma, like you said.
But
because like marijuana and kratom, like you can grow that stuff yourself and you can medicate yourself and solve things without buying a prescription. So I think there's something there.
But I will say that we're a culture of idols and we like to idolize things. And so there is always a risk for, doing an excess amount of.
I think it's worse though that we demonize so many things, right? Like as a culture, we demonize marijuana so long without even understanding it and understanding the effects. And like the medical studies that have been done have shown that it's way healthier than alcohol It's currently a Schedule One drug, meaning it has zero medical use, and then it's like 100% legal. But there have been so many studies that have shown that there are so many medical benefits. So
Mm-hmm.
it's such a sham that it's still a Schedule One drug.
Yeah, I
But
don't
it's
like.
because it's been demonized, and I think
Yeah.
that's way worse than idolizing things
Well,
personally.
I just mean like there's a natural tendency to use an excess amount of things in our culture, but it's because it's probably been demonized. And so a lot of times when there's something that's bad for us, we're not supposed to do it. We have that mentality, well, it's like, well, I want to do it. I want to try it. And so it's like
Yeah, that's fair.
that reverse psychology is where so it's like they both go hand in hand,
Yeah,
demonizing something and then idolizing it.
that's fair. I think you're right. I think you're right there.
Toby thinks I'm right.
No, don't get used to it.
I've agreed with you multiple times in this podcast.
I know, but I've never heard you say it out loud.
Oh well, I'm sorry I haven't said it more. I try to make an effort because like I'm a little persnickety, and like I've
You're
said,
cynical.
I think I'm smart and I act like that. So I think it's important to acknowledge when I agree with people because I don't want to be like an asshole all the time. I'm okay with being an asshole a little bit of the time, but
I
I want to
agree with
tell
one person, go me.
yeah, I mean I want to tell people when I agree with them or when they say something I hadn't thought of. I think it's good to let people know. Or which it happens very rarely, but like once or twice every 10 years I'm wrong. So I think it's important to let people know when I'm wrong to, acknowledge that. Just kidding. Happens more than that.
Sure.
But yeah, no, I think like that's, I hope that folks because this whole the criminalizing folks just in general, I mean misdemeanors, fines, oh my god, it just keeps people poor. It just puts them in more debt,
Well, yeah,
more
like the
evictions. Oh, I hate evictions.
yeah.
Like, it's just horrible. Going to eviction court is like going to a homeless shelter. It is.
Yeah.
Oh, our municipal court in Ohio, it like is a homeless shelter. You walk in, there's a stench because it's just all poor people fighting for their lives in different cases here and there. And then there's like police officers. You don't see just like your normal middle class person go into municipal court on a Wednesday afternoon. No. It's rough. And it's these people who just like can't catch a break. They just
Yeah.
cannot. And I will say, like, I'm for a both and situation. Like, okay, maybe they made a mistake, or maybe they shouldn't have been doing this, or maybe they shouldn't have been doing that. Maybe they should have been working. I don't know. But from the amount of people I've worked with in my short amount of time of doing social services, it's usually the system that is against them. And that is like causing these barriers and these fines and these little paperwork like, "Oh, you gotta file an appeal, you gotta file this," and it's like, it's exhausting for me to do, much less somebody that's already suffering with, like, trauma after trauma after trauma, stress after stress after stress. Oh, it's just like it's horrible. But I don't that's where I like doing my job and I'm passionate about it because it's like, okay, I do have the competency to use a computer and to like ask these follow-up questions and to look for these extra papers and I'll fax things for my clients that they can't do or they would have to go to the library to do it. Not nobody has a fax at home. No, nobody has a
Yeah.
printer at home. And there are companies or like courts out there that are like, we need you to fax this over to us. And it's like,
It's like, you think I got a fax?
I have a
Yeah.
fax because I work in an office.
Right.
My client lives in the projects. They don't have a fax machine.
Did you know that fax is short for facsimile?
That's a dumb word.
I didn't know.
I at my last job, I was on I actually led a hiring panel for one of the vacant positions that we had, one of the civilian positions. And
Mhm.
one of the guys put on his resume, he put like his facsimile address. And I was like, facsimile, like, what the hell is that? And then one of the older guys on the panel, he's like, like fax. And I was like, that's what fax is short for. Anyway,
You
Like,
don't learn those things in grad school.
well, it seemed like almost everyone on the panel knew that but me, but I think they were all older than me. And
There it is.
they all made fun of me relentlessly, and I was like, sorry, I didn't know. Sorry, I didn't know
They
that
can
people
have
really
that.
fax stuff anymore. I thought you just would email it to each other now, but
Well,
anyway.
also, I tell all of my clients about this app on your phone called Scan Genius or
Oh,
Genius Scan.
you mean
Okay.
Get it.
you mean
Download it.
that one? Or wait,
What? Do you have it?
I use Cam Scanner. I imagine that's
you
probably
mean that
Yeah.
one?
similar.
Yes, Genius Scan,
I
whatever it's
love
called.
Genius Scan. It's the best.
It
I
is
used it today.
awesome. You can take a picture of like a piece of, legal document or your ID or something, and it literally turns it into like a scanned item with like out all the edgings, and
You can export it like as a PDF and all that stuff. It's amazing. It's
it's
one of the
amazing.
best apps I've ever had in my life.
I tell every one of my clients about it. I'm like, look, download this app. You're gonna go home, you're gonna take a picture of this paper, and then you're gonna email it to me, and then I'll email it for you. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And I'm like, there you go. You're welcome.
Wow, technology.
Saving lives one day at a time.
Look at you go.
Toby, you should download Genius Scan.
Well, I use Cam
He's got one.
Scanner,
Yeah.
and it also converts stuff to a PDF and makes it easy to email. But it has the free version. It has a watermark on it that I can delete. Like if I email it, what I do is I email it to myself, and I pull it up on my computer to open Adobe PDF, and I can delete the watermark if I think about it, if I care about it. But no, that works real well for me, so I'll probably keep using that.
Yeah, I actually just had to get my orders, my ECS orders on a PDF today.
Yeah,
Oof,
dude.
that's
So
rough because that's got sensitive information on there.
Yeah. A lot of times there is sensitive information, but you can protect it.
Can you? Does it have end-to-end encryption?
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe
It's a trade-off, you know.
Gets the job done.
Gets the job done. That's probably what matters the most.
Well, guys, I really gotta go.
Well,
no, you're not able to leave.
we've been talking for a while. Thank you, Morgan. This was way better than what Christian and I tried to record earlier. So thank you.
No doubt, no doubt.
It's not that funny when you say
Ah, jokes.
Oh.
All right, guys.
All right. Well, thanks, Morgan. And thank you to everybody.
I hope I'm welcome back one day.
Yeah, do you have any like final plugs that you want to make for the
Any
audience?
words of advice or wisdom?
We can even put like your social media in the bio.
I don't have social media.
Good for you. Good for you.
I'm only on Facebook
Well,
because I'm a grandma. So
I don't have social media, but I'm on Facebook. Come
yes,
on.
I mean, okay, but like nobody does anything on it's not Instagram, it's not Twitter, it's just Facebook.
Why?
I just like look people up on there and like
That's creepy.
Stalk them.
that's it. Yeah, stalk all the guys I meet on Bumble and then never delete add them. So I mean, just keep your head up, guys. I don't know.
Good advice from Mo. Thank you.
Yeah.
And good night.